I don't think Kansas City's going to allow another 100-yard rusher for the 19th straight game. There's a reason. It's not by luck. This is schematic. And Spags has done an incredible job since he's been there of stopping the run and really pigeonholing these offenses to play kind of left-handed. When they played the Philadelphia Eagles in 2022 in the Super Bowl, he said, hey, we're not going to let you run this football. Jalen Hurts is going to have to beat us. And Jalen Hurts almost beat him. He threw for 300 yards, a touchdown. He ran for 71 yards, had a heck of a game. If it wasn't for that fumble and scoop and score and, a couple iffy calls, we could be talking about the Philadelphia Eagles as the Super Bowl champions that year. And, the Kansas City Chiefs being a different, speaking about them a little differently than we are right now. But I think Spags is going to continue to put pressure on this team and try to have Jalen Hurts. And I know I said this, Eagles fans are going to be frustrated with me saying, oh man, Jalen Hurts played fantastic in the last Super Bowl these two teams played, threw for 300 yards, had one of his best games of his career on the biggest stage. He's going to have to do that again if you're going to beat the two-time back-to-back champs. You're going to beat Andy Reid. You're going to beat Spags. And I know this Philadelphia defense has been phenomenal all season long. They're number one in total defense, number one in pass defense, second in scoring defense. You are not getting easy yards there. But Patrick Mahomes is 17-3 in the playoffs in general, 50 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions, 105 passer rating, and he didn't do anything crazy incredible. The last time these two teams played in the Super Bowl, that was when they had this D-line that was really formidable. They had a really good secondary. A lot of the pieces are still there. I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson was there. I think Slay was there. Obviously, Jalen Carter is there's some new faces on the defensive line, younger faces, younger guys. Nolan Smith has been a menace in these playoffs. Nakobe Dean, who's been injured, isn't going to play, but Oren Burks has played really phenomenal in his stead. You got to give him a lot of credit. Zach Bond is a Pro Bowler, all-pro this season. He's going to be a difference maker for this team. And then you got the young guys, Quinyon Mitchell, Quintanamo Bay has played incredible all season long. Really confident for a rookie. Blankenship, it does a great job back there, and Cooper DeJean in the nickel and with the punt returns is an impact player. But when you're playing Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs, they're going to take what you can give them. We played against them. And when we played against them, and this was a long time ago in 19 when Patrick was young, we had them. I thought we had them beat. We held them to 10 points all the way until 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And then, bang, 21 unanswered, game. And so you have to understand this is a championship team with championship medal and championship hunger. And they're going to be they're not going to go quietly into this night. So people thinking this is going to be a 2-score game, a 3-score, anything like that, you're confused. This is going to be a really close game that's going to come down to the last drive. And I know both fan bases know how it's going to go. If it comes down to Patrick Mahomes with the ball, 2 minutes or so left in the game, and they're down 3, that story's been written quite a few times, Mitchell. But if the Philadelphia Eagles can control the clock, run the football with Saquon Barkley, run for over 100 yards on the ground, they can win this game. No question about it. They cause some turnovers on defense, and there is a great path. This is a great team. They can win this game. But it's just really tough to beat the champs, Mitchell.
I mean, you look at this Eagles team, and they've been quietly dominant all season. I mean, they really haven't lost a game since week 4 with a healthy Jalen Hurts. If this Kansas City Chiefs defense is going to stymie Saquon Barkley, like you say, what's it going to take for Jalen Hurts to come away with a win here? Because as you mentioned, he had over 300 yards in the last Super Bowl meeting. Do you think he's capable of replicating that?
Yeah, he's definitely capable. I mean, at times, last game against the Commanders, he was asked to take the ball in his hands. He delivered some great passes in the red zone, an out route that was a dime, a few seams. Like, he can deliver the ball, but I think that's the best case scenario for the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's what they're going to bank on. Like, they're going to bank on Jalen Hurts. Hey, he can have a good game. We have to be stout in the red zone. We have to give him – you're not just going to stop A.J. Brown. You're not just going to stop Devontae. Devontae Smith had over 100 yards in their last Super Bowl. Obviously, these are two different teams, and I know all that's different. A.J. Brown had 96 yards in that game. Jalen Hurts was their leading rusher with 71 yards, threw for 300 yards. Like, again, you can't stop. Their offensive line is too good. You're not going to be able to stop everything about this team. Their receiver core is too good. Dallas Goedert is a really good player in his own right. So you have to take away something. And I think that's what made the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick really effective. It's not like, hey, we're going to stop everything they do. We're going to stop what they do best, and then we'll deal with what else they do. And so right now, what they do best is running the football. Saquon Barkley, over 2,400 yards on the season, including the playoffs. You have to find a way to stymie him. And I think that's what they've done. I mean, you just look at the history of Spags in this Kansas City Chiefs team. Like you said, 18 straight games holding runners under 100 in the playoffs. That's not by accident. And so is Saquon Barkley different? No question about it. Is he having an incredible year? No question. Will he break a run? If he doesn't, I'd be really, really surprised, because this offensive line is still really good, and he's still one of the best backs in the National Football League, if not the best running back in the National Football League. So he's going to get his. If he breaks over 100, is that a guaranteed win for the Philadelphia Eagles? It's not, because in the last Super Bowl, they won the time of possession. I think the Kansas City Chiefs only had the ball 24 minutes in that entire game and still found a way to win because of those turnovers and because of that Nick Bolton scoop and score. It was a high-scoring game. I don't think this is going to be that high-scoring of a game, because I think both of these defenses are going to make huge plays in this game, and it's going to come down to who can make less mistakes, who gets the big turnover. Does the Philadelphia Eagles defense create the turnover that Nick Bolton created in the last Super Bowl? Is it Jalen Carter coming through in the clutch, which he did against the Rams? Hey, he ruined that drive. If he doesn't make that sack, it looked like they had a receiver open over the middle of the field that could have potentially won the Rams that ball game. So if you look at this Philadelphia Eagles team, they have all the talent on both sides of the ball to get this win. But the Kansas City Chiefs have won, and they've won close games all season long. We talked about it. They could have easily missed the playoffs with some of the games that if they would have lost. If some of those one-score games would have went the other way, they could have been a 7-8 win team. But they found a way to win almost every single one of those games, and that's why in those moments they're calm, their demeanor is calm, their execution is there. Ever since they moved Joe Thuney to tackle, they've been better on the offensive line. They've been Caliendo's done fine at left guard, and they've done a great job. It's been a different offensive line because they've been so weak on the edges. That's where people have attacked them, and that's where I would expect Philly to attack them. But now, do you switch him back because Jalen Carter is in the middle? Do you switch Thuney back to guard because Jalen Carter is a handful? We'll see.
Would you say, is there a better playoff performer in the clutch than Patrick Mahomes? It's getting to the point where we have to have a conversation about it.
No question it's getting to that point, but the hard part about that conversation is always going to be Tom beat him twice, and when Tom was at the end. So I know, I want to put him in that GOAT conversation, but that's just understand it's going to be a hard battle to win no matter how many Super Bowls he wins, because even if he gets to 7, people will say, well, Tom beat him at like 43 and like 45, or 42 and 43 or something like that. Like 43 years old, he beat him in the Super Bowl, and he beat him in the playoffs in the NFC or AFC Championship. So at the end of the day, head-to-head matchups will come into to factor. And it's not like Mahomes was young when they played the second time. It was like, hey, Mahomes had already won a Super Bowl. They beat us in 19, and then he beat him in 20. That's what happened. So he's definitely one of the all-time calmest. He executes. He's accurate. He always seems to make the right play, whether it's with his arm or with his legs. And I know people have gotten on the Chiefs about, oh, man, the refs. Yeah, that's a storyline. That's a storyline. That's something that everybody seems to see and everybody seems to agree on, even if they can't agree on which team is the best or who's their favorite player. It seems like there's a general consensus outside of Kansas City that there's some benefit from the refs. It is what it is at this point. Nobody's going to remember that storyline if they win the 3rd championship. Nobody's going to be like, oh, man, the refs gave them to them. We're going to put an asterisk. Like there was a whole deflate gate and everything associated with the Patriots, and nobody talks about it really anymore. They just talk about, hey, Tom Brady has 7 of them. Like history doesn't remember things like that. So that's why I don't spend a lot of time talking about it, because it doesn't matter. That's not the way history is going to be remembered. So his greatness and how he's executed down the stretch is something that should be studied and should be appreciated in the moment in real time, because that's really what's happening. He's in very tough, critical moments, he's executing at a really high level. Even in that Super Bowl we played against him, 21 unanswered points. He played really great football, delivered some really great passes down the stretch. That's what helped this team win games. Now, he only threw for, 182 yards or so, or 187 or something in this first game, but he threw for 3 touchdowns. Like, he made the right plays, and I think that's another thing that makes this team hard to beat. They don't really care how they beat you. They're not looking for no number one receiver. Hey, we got to get this guy the ball. We got to throw it to him. We got to feed this guy. However we get it done is how we're getting it done.
Richard, if they were able to accomplish what seems to be the impossible, winning 3 consecutive Super Bowls, would this make Kansas City the best dynasty ever? How big would a three-peat be for the Kansas City Chiefs?
It'd be huge. And just because of how they did it, in the teams they went against while doing it. You know, we talk about that Philadelphia Eagles team. That's a really, I think they almost broke the record for sacks that season. That D-line was really incredible. Brandon Graham, Hassan Reddick. They had Javon Hargraves. They had so many guys. Fletcher Cox was on that team, and there's so much talent on that team that they beat. And then you go back to last season, the San Francisco 49ers and Christian McCaffrey, Offensive Player of the Year, Kyle Shanahan, that offense, and then Nicholas John Bosa, Defensive Player of the Year on the other side. Really talented defense. Fred Warner, the All-Pro, George Kittle. We can talk about all the weapons, Brandon Ayuk and all those guys, and they found a way to beat those. And if you look at it and you say, hey, what All-Pros do they have in their receiving core or their skill positions offensively? And you're not going to find a lot. DeAndre Hopkins was one of the best receivers in the league at one point, but, he's not all he used to be. Is he still really effective? No question about it. Xavier Worthy is a good, fast receiver, but he's young and still has some growing to do, some developing to do. You don't look at their offensive skills and skill positions and say, oh, man, this is one of the best. They're going to be in a Super Bowl every year. And they've done it different ways. When they lost Tyreek Hill, they adjusted. When they lost Rashee Rice this season to an injury, they adjusted. And they just keep adjusting to the tune of 15-2 during the regular season. And then you look on the other side. You obviously got Patrick Mahomes, but defensively, they just keep homegrown talent. They get a few free agents here and there, but they're mostly homegrown guys. You talk about drafting Karlaftis and McDuffie and Jalen Watson, and they just have continued. Chris Jones has been a menace there for a long time, and they do it with the guys that they picked up. And I think that's the reason it'll be so special, is because you're not talking about like some super teams. These aren't super teams where you're like, hey, honestly, Philadelphia might be more talented, like player for player, in terms of star power and what they've accomplished. And, if you look at their resumes, you'd say, hey, offensively, Philly might have the edge. Offensive line wise, it'd be hard to argue that. You got a Pro Bowl wide receiver. You got the Dallas Goedert, who could easily be a Pro Bowler. You got multiple Pro Bowlers, Hall of Famer on the line, all pros on the line. You got the best back in football. You got a quarterback who's been to multiple Pro Bowls, played great in the Super Bowl. And for them to three-peat, that's pretty incredible. And it's hard to do in football with the injuries, the unpredictability of it all, man. It'd probably be one of the most impressive things in sports. Obviously their sports is a long, wide-ranging, and it depends on who you ask, but that's my opinion.
Let's get down to it. It's prediction time. You're going to make one fan base upset again, Richard, but that's what we do here. Who do you got? Is it the Kansas City Chiefs or the Philadelphia Eagles?
Like I said, if you go player for player, and Philadelphia Eagles fans get mad because I don't pick their team, is what it is. They're a great team. They really are. They're one of if not the most talented team in the National Football League. And Tony Gonzalez said it all season on Thursday night. I'm sure they love that. But until you beat the champs, I got to go with the champs. And, this is no slight against Kansas City because I would think there's a number of ways they can win this game. They could win them straight up. They could control the game the entire time. But just betting against the Kansas City Chiefs right now because I'm picking against them in the other two Super Bowls and they've won them. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it this time. I'm not going to do it because I just they've always found a way. They keep finding a way. And this season is the epitome of embodies everything they've done. They have just found a way. They haven't really blown teams out. They haven't scored over 30 points in any of the regular season games, and they just found a way. Hey, defensively, we're going to make a play. Offensively, we're going to make a play. Like somebody's going to make a play for them. And the Philadelphia Eagles have won in a variety of ways, but they have leaned a lot on Saquon Barkley and that defense. Jalen Hurts, when he's needed to perform, has performed really well and thrown really accurate passes and helped his team use his legs when it's time. And I think that's going to be a factor in this game. But it's just hard for me to pick against the Kansas City Chiefs when they just have not lost. They do not lose Super Bowl games. Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes have only lost 3 games in his entire career in the playoffs, 20 games played. So for me to bet against that just doesn't make a lot of sense. Even though I think the Philadelphia Eagles can easily win this game, I can't bet against Kansas City. So I'm going with Kansas City.